everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in today at 10,000 Road to Financial Independence. Today, I have our very awesome guest, Steve Sims. Steve has been a serial entrepreneur and a CEO of a luxury concierge service, Bluefish. And Steve also has been a coaching for helping people to expand their mindset to how to scale up to reach the big impossible or the big possible goals. Steve, very grateful to have you here today.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So Steve, I wanted to kind of take our listening all the way to the back of their childhoods, your childhoods, our guest childhoods, to kind of figure out what the mindset for folks like you who are very successful, where they all begin from. So can you kind of walk me back to your childhood, if you have to name one person or incident that was super kind of like revealing or, you know, helped you to think about, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur, or, oh, I want to be my own boss, and or also like creating a passive income. Can you kind of help us walk through some thoughts on that?
Yeah. That's a little question with a big answer. And let's start at the beginning. I don't think my life is any different to any other entrepreneur. I think entrepreneurs have this, they have this gene, they have this DNA. I would go as far as to say that if you got two entrepreneurs together, you know, and forget how morbid this sounds, but if you cut them in half with a chainsaw, I reckon inside there'd be like this bright purple gene or cell that's exactly the same, regardless of who you are. It doesn't matter where you go in the world. And I've literally spoken all over the planet. And even though I'm meeting people who I'm not of the same culture, I'm not of the same history, the way they were brought up, the entrepreneurial spirit is the exact same. And that is aggravation. Entrepreneurs are aggravated. The only reason you have listeners is because people don't want to be who they are. They want to be who they can become. They're aggravated of where they are now. And as a guy growing up in East London, my family were bricklayers. I left school at the age of 15 and I'm put on a building site. Now, I grew up in the 80s, so I didn't have Instagram to tell me how inadequate my life was. I just grew up thinking to myself, is this it? You know, is there a better life for me? And so I was aggravated. I didn't know why. And of course, you know, in the late 80s and early 90s in East London, being a big, you know, ugly lad that rode around on motorcycles, people just thought I was a troubled kid. But I was just aggravated and perplexed. I needed to find something better for myself. And you asked me, was there a moment? Was there a conduit? Was there a spark that changed my destination? And you usually can go, well, it was a series of no. One meeting changed my life. Now, I've been to, I met Tony Robbins, and I've met John Porter, and I've met Elon Musk, and each one of them have added to my life or changed my mindset. And I've been very fortunate, quite simply, to work and coach some of the most affluent clients in the planet, many of them that you've never heard of. And they've all changed my life. But my biggest pivot, my monumental mammoth mountain moving experience, and I can't overbuild it, was my granddad. Now, my granddad was nearly 7 foot tall, and he's an Irish boy. So he was a big tank of a fella. And I remember one day on the building site, it's raining and I didn't want to be there. And I'm about 16 years old. And my dad told me to get some bricks and climb up the scaffolding and drop them off for the bricklayers. And I did that. And I got to the top of the scaffolding. And next to the scaffolding, next to the ladder, was my dad. Next to him was his brother, my uncle. Next to him were my two cousins, which was, one was like 19 years old and the other one was like 26. And then next to him was my granddad, who was like in his 70s or 80s. Now, my granddad, for some reason, I'm 6 foot tall, but my granddad was like way bigger than all of us. Funny enough, my dad was shorter than me. So it was very weird how we were all different heights. But you could see my granddad stand out from any crowd.
Yeah.
But what really took me was I saw my family tree. You know, my two cousins, my uncle, my dad, my grand.
Yeah.
There was my family tree. This was my entire lifeline
Yeah.
on that scaffolding. And it stopped. It literally just stopped me in my tracks. My dad yelled at me, put the bricks down and get some more. But that moment, that picture, I can still vividly remember. Now, 11 o'clock came around and it was tea time. Basically, all the people got out of the rain. They climbed into this old caravan, kept themselves warm, tried to hug around some of the heaters. And as I walked in, my granddad had already taken up his position around a heater and was getting out his sandwiches and using his flask for his cup of tea to try and warm himself up.
Yeah.
And you imagine like 20 or 30 bricklayers in a big old caravan trying to warm up and they're all damp already. Place stinks. Place is noisy. And I was trying to kind of like get through all the people to get to my granddad, which I did. And I crouched down. There was no chair. Again, remember it accurately. I crouched down in front of my granddad. My granddad was pouring his tea, was now blowing on his tea to try and cool it down a bit so he could start guzzling it.
Yeah.
And I said to him, Granddad, did you ever think you'll be doing this at your age?
Yeah.
Now, bearing in mind, that was a very rude question when you think about it. And I'm surprised I didn't get punched into the wall. But he didn't even look at me. He just carried on blowing into his tea. And without looking at me, he said, son, if you don't quit today, you'll be me tomorrow. And that's all he said. Never looked at me. And all of a sudden, the entire caravan went quiet. I was just in that moment. I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Now, the horn went off. Everyone had to get out of the caravan and get back on the building site. I came out of that caravan like a greyhound coming out of a racetrack, and I shot over to my dad. Now, my dad hated being called dad in front of all the other workers. Okay.
Yeah.
But I was lost in that moment. And I was like, Dad. And he's looking around at me with daggers in his eyes going, what? Shush. What do you want? I went, Dad, I got to quit.
Yeah.
And he was like, what? And I said to him, I said, I was up there. I saw you. I saw my granddad. I saw me. And I'm babbling like an idiot on coke. And I'm like, and then I went in the caravan. I went up to granddad. If you don't quit today, you'll be meeting more. I said, I've got to quit.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know it can't be this because I don't want to be granddad tomorrow. Now, again, that's a very rude thing to say.
Yeah.
But as I said it to my dad, my granddad walked behind me. Now, this is a sad moment because he would walk behind you and you bloody knew it because it was like the Sears Tower walking behind you.
Yeah.
And I could see the shadow and I could feel his presence. And I saw my dad look up to him. And they looked at each other, and my dad's face changed. And he looked at me and he went, all right, we're light-handed this week, so you finish off and you're out Friday. I went, all right, good. Thank you. And I went. My granddad died a little bit later, and I never, ever got the chance to tell him, hey, if it hadn't been for you, I wouldn't have gone out. Now, before we prettify it and say that I left on Friday and I became a millionaire on Tuesday, which we know is bullshit, I went into so many different jobs trying to find out where I could be. Yeah. I tried to become a stockbroker. I tried cake rep salesman, lorry driver, doorman, security guard. I went through so many different jobs just trying to find out where I fit. And I would either do a job to make money or I was doing a job to try and get into where I wanted to be. And in some cases I was like, I worked for a cleaning crew and I'm cleaning toilets in the morning and then I'm trying to work for an insurance firm during the day. Yeah. So that aggravation told me this wasn't it, told me that I could do something else, but I just didn't know what it was that I was going to do. And like all entrepreneurs, we leave a secure job working 40 hours a week to become insecure and work 80 hours a week. Right. And we jump
and make half.
We jump out of the frying pan into the volcano. So it wasn't an intelligent move, but every entrepreneur out there will know that it was the move that we all make. So that was the beginning of my little journey.
That's awesome. That's an amazing story. And then the moment to realize that, this may be my life if I don't do something to it. I think some of our listener will have that one moment, some maybe just kind of chipping away, but they know they weren't doing the things that they're meant to be. That's really awesome story. Thank you for sharing that. So then my next question is, you went on to a series of jobs. I can look you up on the Wikipedia. There's all these different kind of jobs that you went through. So what kind of helped you finally find this the right thing? When you accumulated to it, like, did you ever had like a very long day job that you were held? Or due to the entrepreneur spirits that you had, you basically kind of went through jobs to job, trying to find what's that one thing for you, like around
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
So I literally bounced off the walls. My mum just thought she was just, checking her watch before I went to jail, because I would go to work at a new job at 9 o'clock in the morning, and by 10:30 I was coming home. And I was like, nah, don't like it. And she'd be like, but you need to work. And I'd be like, yeah, but I didn't like it. I'm going to go find. There was one time I had 3 jobs in one day. I started a job, quit, started a job. So these weren't exactly high-end jobs, but I was like, nah, don't want. So I knew I wasn't willing to settle. I knew I wasn't willing to tolerate. I would do anything I needed for the money. That's why quite often I was working on the door at night, or working in a bar, or, as I say, I worked for a cleaning crew, cleaning houses and cleaning offices in the mornings. And then during the day was my find myself moment. The funny thing was, I realized that one of the biggest problems I had was the room that I was in. Now, I came up with a statement. I came up with a philosophy, because, again, we didn't have the internet in the 80s.
Yeah.
So I came up with this concept that you are the room you are in. Now, we know the statement, you are the combination of the 5 friends you hang around with, but that was my thing. You are the room you're in. Yeah. So what I started doing was I tried to get in good rooms. Now, when I'm in the pub on a Friday night, I ride motorcycles. I'm in biker bars in East London, and everyone's poor, drinking, crap beer and cheap whiskey. And I'm thinking to myself, the room that I'm in, this is me. If I don't want to be a broke-ass biker, I've got to stop being in a room full of broke-ass bikers. Yeah. So I started to try and repel myself away from where I was, hoping that the location would change who I was. I ended up talking my way in England. There was a recruitment firm that was actually hiring brokers, stockbrokers, training them for Hong Kong.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
So I thought to myself, right, if I can get in there, I not only change my room, I change my country. Yeah. I cut all ties with everything.
Yeah.
So I talked my way into this job. Yeah. I don't know how I got it. That's a whole different story in itself, but I got the job. Yeah. And so they flew me out to Hong Kong, and they had about 60 people they were flying over. So I think that had something to do with it. But I landed, and then I lasted 1 day and I was fired. Now I'm in Hong Kong.
Right.
Luckily, they said, because we fired you and we got you here, we've got to let you stay in the apartment for 3 months, and we've got to pay you for the month.
Oh, that's nice.
So I had severance. Yeah. And I had someone to say. So it gave me a chance to go, well, okay, I've got a roof over my head. Now that I'm out of that room, let me see what I can do. Now, I knew I could go back to England, go back to my pub, and everyone would be like, oh, Sims, what were you doing? You knew you couldn't do it. You're an idiot. Stay with us, have a bad whiskey. Yeah. I knew I could do that, and I wouldn't lose face. People would laugh that I tried, and that'd be it. But I thought to myself, what if I did try? Yeah. And again, tried loads of different jobs, applied for different jobs, never got any of them. And it's funny how your darkest moments can sometimes be your greatest opportunities. Yes. I was in a bar in a place called Wan Chai, in Hong Kong, and in the 80s. Yeah. And bottom line of it, you wouldn't know anything about this. You know, what are you, like 22, 21?
No.
You know, you wouldn't remember these places. Bottom line, if anyone out there goes, yeah, I know Wan Chai in the 80s, then you're a deviant. Because it was a rough location. And all the bars were kind of girly bars, and you know, it was a rough side of, well, I won't say side of town, it was the center of town, but it was where all the clubs and all the foreigners would actually hang out and get up to mischief. And I was at this bar, and I was sat outside. They had a tiny little patio on the side street, drinking my Shivers whiskey, because that's all they ever seem to sell over there.
Yeah.
Drinking my Shivers, and I'm thinking to myself, this is it. Now, one little fact you should be aware of at the time, I met my wife when I was 17 and she was 16. Wow. So she was still in England thinking that I was doing okay in Hong Kong, and I was fast going into a hole. You know, I didn't have the heart to tell her. This is the only time I've ever lied to my wife, because I used to phone her once a week and made up all these stories that everything was going well. My training was, so that I could hopefully not have her panic, because it wouldn't help anybody by her panicking. Yeah. So I'm in this bar and I'm drinking, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm not getting a job. It's not working. You know, everything's bad. Everything's terrible. And the lady that owned the bar came out, and I won't be rude and try and do the impersonation, but she was everything you could think about as a kind. She was like 80 years old, 3 foot tall, very aggressive, hardcore woman that owned this dodgy bar in Wan Chai. She was a perfect character for TV. Yeah. I'd never met her in my life, and I'm just sitting there on my own, sorrowing into my whiskey, and she comes out and she pokes me and she went, "You." And I looked at her thinking, who the hell are you, poking? And she turned around to me and she said, "Your boys are in there, and if you don't tell them to get out and pay their bill now, my people will come and hurt them. Get your boys out." And I thought to myself, who the hell are my boys? I'm here on my own. Who do you think I am, and who do you think they are? So the curiosity got the better of me. Yeah. And I walked up to the front door, which was literally a curtain. I opened up the curtain, and there's these 3 big British lads, all football shirts on, getting a bit leery and loud, and yelling at the girls and this kind of stuff. And she'd obviously thought that was me. Right. Yeah. So I said to her, that had nothing to do with me. And she turned around and she said, "You get them out, I buy all your drinks." Nice. And I thought to myself, well, there you go. At least I can get drunk and it's not going to cost me anything. So I went, all right. So I went over to the guys, sat down. They looked at me, because I've just sat down at that table, and I went, "Look, guys, I've just been asked to get you out of the club. So please pay and walk out the front door. Come back tomorrow and I'll buy you a beer. Or there's a bunch of guys that are going to come running outside of that curtain in a second, hit you, and you ain't going to see Tuesday. Yeah. I really want you to make the right decision. Anyway, all the best, boys." And I walked back outside. Yeah. 2-3 minutes later, they all walked out and they went, "Oh, cheers, man. Thanks a lot. Thanks. Yeah. And I went, "Oh, you're welcome." I didn't care. I was getting free drink for the night, and I was going to drink as much as I could. So she came up to me and she said, "Look," she said, "You be doorman. You be doorman." I was like, "What?" And she said, "I'll pay you, and I thought, well, okay, I've now got a job. Yeah. The annoying thing was the following day, those guys came back and I had to pay him a beer. And I turned around to her and I went, "Oh, these 3 guys get a free beer because I promised them last night." And she said, "You pay, not me. You promised, you pay." So I had to buy them a free beer before I even got my paycheck. Yeah. Now, I tell you that story because I'm now the doorman of a nightclub in Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. Not my proudest career move. Yeah. But what happened was pretty spectacular, because standing on the door every night, and they would move me around different nightclubs, and different private parties, I suddenly got to see how humanity interacts with each other.
Mm-hmm.
I could recognize the guys that were just looking for a fight that night. I could recognize the girls that were going out to, you know, celebrate a new contract or to celebrate a new job or to celebrate that they hadn't seen each other since high school. I suddenly started to notice all these social occasions and the reasons and how people moved. One little funny thing was I would be on the door and on the left of me, there would be a lineup. There would be like a carpet.
Yeah.
As people walked towards the club, they would self-select, not me. They would self-select. Do they just walk up to me and just say, hey, good evening, and walk through the door? Or do they naturally just assume and get in a queue?
Yeah.
And people would self-select. It was very interesting to recognize that. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I was getting educated on psychology. And I had always said, I need to be in the room I need to be in the right room.
Right.
I could now create my own room. So what I would do was if the bar shut at 2:00 at night, I would go around to the people with a bit of money and I'd be like, look, we're gonna do a closed door. Do you want to stay later? It's only $500 and you can, you know, have the whole place to yourself. And I would start closing the place down, but only inviting rich people or the people that I thought was rich. Yeah. And it went from doing little closed clubs to taking over the full club on quiet nights. Yeah. I started taking over penthouses, yachts, and I would only invite rich people to these events. And here was a funny thing. So I became a party promoter. Yeah. Here was the daft thing. If I sold drink inside the club, I had to have a liquor license. Okay. Yeah. If I gave it away, I didn't need a permit. I didn't need a license. So I would go up to people and I'd be like, oh, I'm doing a private party. It's $500 entrance, but all the drink and food is free. Yeah. So I was selling in advance, but there's a lot of people. If I said to you, hey, let's go to a party tomorrow night, it's only $500 to get in. Yeah. You may turn around and go, well, what do I get for $500? Right. And you'd want to know because $500 may be important to you. Yeah. When you're really rich, $500 is like us spending $50, you know? Right. Yeah. So I started doing it and I suddenly found that I was in the crowd of affluent people. I was in the room that I wanted to be. Yeah. Now, I never wanted to be as Forbes called me, the real life Wizard of Oz. Yeah. I never wanted to be that person. I never wanted to launch the world's leading concierge firm. But I ended up going from private parties in Hong Kong to working with Tiffany, Cartier, Gulfstream Aircraft, Ferrari, Formula One, the Grammys, Sir Elton John's Oscar party, the New York Fashion Week. I literally have worked for the most affluent people in the planet and for the most prestigious events in the world during my concierge period. Yeah. But the only reason I did that was to be able to sit in a room with really powerful people and go, hey, how do you look at that problem? Yeah. What makes you tick? So from my doorman position, if I hadn't have worked on that door, I'd have never got to watch people and I'd have never been able to have launched my coaching and my book and everything else. So it's funny, your darkest hour may actually be your brightest without you realizing it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you're so close to it sometimes that you give up too soon. For a lot of people, that's amazing story. But naturally, we always talked about like superpower. There's a superpower I can sense in you with people. So what do you think is your superpower? When did you kind of discover that, that helped you kind of advance to your entrepreneurship?
I got told it 7 years ago. And it's funny that you should mention it. So I've got I live here in Los Angeles now, and I know people that have been in the Marvel movies and stuff. Yeah. And I had a dinner party. Yeah. And in the dinner party, I invited some very powerful people. There were some rock stars, some movie stars. And I'm sitting at the table because I've always been a little kid. I've always been kind of like in awe of what I can get up to. Yeah. And I'm having this dinner party at my house here in LA. And there are people that the day before I'd actually seen one on a poster for one of the new Marvel movies as one of the main characters. Yeah. And I'm sitting in there going, these are my friends.
Yeah.
This is pretty cool,
Yeah.
And one of them, because of the Marvel, turned around and was saying about the new movie coming out.
Yeah.
And he said, let's play a game. Let's play a game. Now, I was opposite him.
Yeah.
So he started the game to his left.
Yeah.
And he went, right, if you were a superhero, what would your superpower be?
Yeah.
So I knew I had about 8 people before it got to me. So I'm thinking to myself, right, I better think of this. I've really got to think of something really cool. It's got to be the power to, cure hunger, or to provide food, or, to face evil. I was really trying to think what would be a really cool superpower for me to say in front of all of these, these icons that are at my house having dinner.
Yeah.
So it went all the way around the table, and it got to me, and he said to me, Steve, what's your superpower then? And I pretended to think about it. I was like, oh, I don't know. And I forget what I had in my head, but I had some stupid idea. And my wife turned around and she said, well, actually, that's easy. I can answer that. And I went, okay, hon, what is it? She went, Steve's got the power of ignorance. He's ignorant. And I thought to myself, that's not cool. Now I'm looking at all of these people on my table and I'm thinking, in my party, in my house, you've just called me ignorant. Yeah. And there were a few of the people looking at me going, oh, he's going to get divorced, and I was thinking, where the hell's, and my wife turned around and sensed that the tide was turning in this kind of energy. And she turned around and went, whoa, hang on a minute. You've known Steve for years, some of you as long as like 15, 20 years.
Yes.
And they went, yeah. She said, how many times has he worked with like the Pope or Elon Musk, or he's managed to get a museum to shut down, or how many times has he done something that you've sat back and gone, how the hell did he manage to pull that off?
Yeah.
And the reason he's been able to pull it off is because he's ignorant to any inadequacies he's got. Yeah. He's ignorant to whether or not he's even skilled enough to do it. He's ignorant to the fact that the person could ever refuse him or give him an answer he doesn't want to hear. Yeah. He just goes in with blind ignorance to the possibility of what he's trying to do could ever fail. And guess what? It therefore doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once she explained it, everyone was going, oh, yeah, you're right. And I went, okay, I'll take it. But that's my superpower. You see, too many people have seen someone or wanted to try something or wanted to pull something off. And then what do? They sit there and they go, oh, I'd love to do that. And then they go, oh, but I couldn't do that. Oh, no, I don't know how I don't it. And they spend longer giving themselves excuses rather than focusing on the dream itself. Right. They talk themselves out of it.
Yeah.
Me, I never took my. I had a client of mine wanted to have a dining experience in Florence. I was actually working with the Pope in Rome at the time, so I was in Italy. So great timing. And I said, "Oh, let me see what I can do for you." So what I did was I actually went down to Florence. I managed to get the Accademia di Galleria museum to shut. And this museum is the museum that houses Michelangelo's David, the most iconic statue in the world. Yeah. I set up a table of 6 at the feet of Michelangelo's David. I closed the museum from 3:00 in the afternoon till 2:00 in the morning. Wow. So my clients can have dinner in this location. And then while they're eating their pasta, I had Andrea Bocelli come in and serenade them.
Wow.
Now, that was the standard that I do. The people just couldn't believe I did it.
Yeah.
And I did it because I never had any possibility that I could fail. I was ignorant to the point of failing. Too many people settle for what they think is possible. Well, let's be serious. If you've never run longer than 500 feet, how do you know if you can run 2 miles? So people settle for what they've achieved. Yeah. Never settle for what you achieved. Go for stuff you can't achieve. And raise your platform, raise your ceiling. As I always say, go for stupid. if you've got a dream in your head, make it so ridiculously stupid that people will laugh at you. Because my friend Elon said to me, they will laugh at you just before they applaud. So go for stupid.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that story because it's so inspirational. I think a lot of our listeners, also our students, a lot of stuff that I've been working on for them is the mindset. We are like our biggest enemy oftentimes because we told ourselves that we can be doing that before we even try to do. I love your analogy about 500-meter versus 2 miles. If I get that right. You know, like
you just don't know.
Yeah, like you just didn't know. Like you may be a great long distance runner, but all you were focusing is the 50-meter dashes, right? So I love that, Steve. So can you tell a listener a little bit more? How do you actually wake up every morning and be ignorant? Isn't that word?
So no, it's a great way to be. My wife says that I'm a 54-year-old 5-year-old. So I'm constantly looking for what I can see, what I can get involved in, what I can put my hands in. So I'm always aware of opportunity. And let's break it down. For a start, I will say that if anyone wants to mess with their head and get a bit bigger, I have a free Facebook group called An Entrepreneur's Advantage with Steve Sims. Totally free, no pitching, but it gets you in a room with other creative disruptors, as I say. But when I wake up in the morning, I want to get into a position of opportunity. You know, like at the moment when someone comes up to you and they go, oh, look at my car. I bought this yellow car. And you look at the car and you've gone, oh, I've never seen that car before. And yet, no, I've never seen a yellow car before. What do you see the following day when you're driving down the road?
All yellow cars. Because
our mind is now open to seeing this. You know, you hear an advert, you listen to a tune on the radio that you don't like, and all of a sudden, as far as you're concerned, that's the only bloody tune they play. Just imagine if your mind was open for that, recognizing opportunity. All you would see every day was opportunity.
Absolutely.
That's like me. I wake up in the morning and I'm like, right, what are we going to disrupt today? What are we going to conquer today? What are we going to massage to our benefit today? I remember I drove down the highway, and there's this junction that I get off the highway here in LA. And there was this, and I don't know if they're Mexican, Colombian. I don't want to be disrespectful, but there's this family. And there's the guy on the left and the wife on the right. And sometimes there's kids. They're always there. And they're always selling flowers. I've never bought any of their flowers. And then when it gets to Valentine's, they sell teddy bears. Okay. And then when we had Kobe Bryant died, they were selling Lakers T-shirts and memorabilia with Kobe's number on it. All right. And then when COVID came along in March and we all got clamped down, they were selling face masks. Now, I thought to myself, there's all these people during COVID, during this disruption, during this noise, during this depression, sitting at home. And the only question is, what can they binge watch on Netflix? There's a family here with very little money that can pivot in a millisecond to focus on the opportunities ahead. Now, when you come off that junction, they have boards. When they first sold the face masks, they were one color, or they were the blue surgical masks. Now you can get them with fake Gucci logos. And they've got an entire board of all these different kind of face masks that they can sell. If they can recognize the opportunity, why can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And then changing your mindset that way. What do you do, Steve, when you wake up in the morning? Do you have a routine that kind of keeps your energy going, constant going? Because as successful people like you know, there's a lot demand on like moving very fast and this and that, like to kind of keep your energy level up on and keep it going.
I think it's recognition and appreciation. Like I'll always, if I'm having a conversation I don't want to have, I'll end it quick. Okay. I don't want to waste my time. I think that's also a benefit of being in my 50s, but I've always been like this. You know, if the conversation isn't good, look, thank you very much. this conversation isn't working for me. Wish you all the best, but no,
Yeah.
goodbye. I would end it. Now, a lot of people would say, oh, he's brash and he's rude. I'm not wasting my second. This is not your life. It's my life.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I would always cut things short there. But I get up in the morning, I kick the dogs out to walk around my yard. I look over the valley. I've got a beautiful view. I drink my cup of coffee.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I have beautiful coffee. I'm grateful that I'm living in California where it's predominantly sunshine every single day. I'm grateful of my dogs. I just got a new puppy. You know, I'm grateful of my beautiful wife that stood by my side, that loves me. I'm grateful upon grateful upon grateful. And that gets you ready. I suppose that's what I do. The things that I don't do are more of a routine. Okay. Like, I don't look at my bank account. I know it sounds funny, but when I was younger, I always used to watch my bank account. Okay. If you watch the bank account, your emotions are therefore based on your bank account. If you've got a lot of money, you're lazy. Okay. Because you're now cocky. If you've got no money, you get involved in deals and you hustle like you shouldn't. Okay. So you start getting desperate, and no one wants to work with someone desperate. So years ago, I stopped looking at my bank account. I wasn't going to allow my bank account to dictate my mood. Okay. That was the first thing I started doing. The second thing, which is very, very important today, was I turned the radio in the morning to music-only stations.
Yes.
I have no news until I want it. That's maybe 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening. Okay. I have no, if something happens in the planet, I'll get a text. It'll appear on, my social feeds. I'll get an alert. Someone will call me, but I don't need to know it. I don't need to wake up in the morning all happy, turn the news on, to have some news reporter go, hey, good morning, and then spend the next 3 hours telling me why it's not. Right. I don't need that. I don't need to wake up and then try to shift that negativity and then get on with being. No, I wake up in the morning, I'm happy. Okay. Whatever's happened in the world has happened in the world. I'll deal with it and I'll be told. And if it's important, then I'll be notified. But I avoid the news and I avoid my bank account, and I'm grateful.
That's so awesome, because then you start the day off with a positive thinking, with your mood in your own control, versus having some external sources to affect how you feel for the whole day. Thank you so much for sharing that wisdom with us. Now, I got to ask this because I'm very curious about your concierge business. Like, in terms of the craziest story that, or the craziest arrangement that you've made through your concierge services, and how did you actually went ahead in the process, you went ahead and achieved the big impossible?
Well, for a start, I've never recognized anything is impossible. Okay. Right. The second you recognize it's impossible, you're giving yourself a dead end.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a big possible.
You're giving you. Yeah. So I always go for stupid. But my concierge firm, which I don't really have much to do with it since Bluefishing came out, which is my book, Bluefishing, The Art of Making Things Happen. Shallow plug there.
Yeah.
But that came out about 3 years ago. So I moved away from the concierge, and now I spend most of my time through stevedsims.com teaching people how to do it for themselves. But the concierge business, I've had you play drums with Guns N' Roses. I've had you walk down the red carpet with Sir Elton John. I've had you sitting at the front row of the New York and the Milan Fashion Week. I've had you playing, I've had people on stage with their favorite rock bands. I've had people playing football with their favorite football stars. I've sent them to the Titanic. Got a couple married in the Vatican by the Pope. Wow. I was the guy that they called the Make-A-Wish Foundation for billionaires.
Yeah.
And that's why Forbes called me the real life Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
I noticed that whenever anyone came to me, they came to me with a shallow version of what their real dream was. So people always, again, whether you're a billionaire or whether you don't have any money, people still settle. Like, imagine you go to sleep tonight and you have this dream that you are flying through New York on a carpet.
Yeah.
Okay. And on that carpet is Sir Elton John and I know Justin Bieber.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Odd
you're all
combination.
singing.
Yeah.
You're all singing away on this carpet as it goes through New York, and then you land and you go and have a brilliant meal, and then you wake up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If I asked you, do you want to reenact any part of that dream? You'll go, well, I don't know Elton John, and maybe I could shake his hand, or maybe I could, go to a concert. You'd settle. You wouldn't say, hey, I want to fly a magic carpet through New York with Elton John and Justin Bieber, and I want it to land outside a beautiful restaurant, and I want us guys. Why could that not happen?
Mm-hmm.
You'd give yourself every reason to go, it can't happen. So I always used to say, and this is very important in sales, never listen to what the client asks for.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to what they lust and desire.
Yeah.
And that's usually the stuff that they're not telling you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you could fabricate a magic carpet.
Yeah.
You could hire Sir Elton John and Justin. All of that is just down to money.
Yes.
People won't give you what their true dreams are. They settle down. So I would always listen to people, just like the guy that I did the Florentine dinner for. He wanted a dining experience that could never be matched again.
Mm-hmm.
I gave him that, but he didn't tell me what he wanted. Yeah. I listened to what he needed and gave him something that he lusted for and would never be beaten. So whatever it is you're going for, go for the ridiculous, go for the stupid, and dream big. I remember when I came back from Florence, I started calling a lot of people that I'd worked with that I hadn't spoken to for years. And I said to them, how come we managed to do this? I'm just interested. How come we did it? Because I'm not particularly brilliant at negotiating. I'm not warm and fuzzy to look at. All the people I spoke to, they said the exact same thing. They said, we did it because you asked.
Right.
No one has ever asked us before.
Right.
You're amazed at what you get when you ask.
Yeah. And the fact that you're surrounded yourself, you create a room for yourself with influence people to get in touch with them. So real quick, we're kind of to the end of our interview, but I'd like to kind of talk about your transition coming from the concierge services that you had, then to Bluefish, and then to coaching. What kind of prompted you to go after what you do right now, and then essentially kind of folded a business that is successful, very successful? What kind of helped you did that transition, and what kind of inspired you to do the transition?
Well, it was funny because the concierge firm, everyone looks at the things that I did as the end goal, the Pope, Elton John.
Because that's someone's dream. Yeah, they
look at those elements. But for me, what always excited me was getting to understand the client, getting to get them to change their perspective of what's possible, getting them to think larger, enjoy it, getting to create the marketing that I got in because I run a business. It never even had a phone number or an email. You couldn't contact me unless you got referred by another billionaire. Yeah. Okay. So I learned about marketing. I learned about positioning. And then I learned about how to coach clients to change their perspective. And you'll be amazed at how many clients that I would work with to do this amazing dream. And then I would work with them on that product launch and on that management tier and on how to communicate between the ranks. I would actually teach sales meetings after I had just taught the client and got him to hang out with his favorite rock band. Yeah. So without realizing it, I was coaching and marketing pretty much all of my life. Yeah. So that when I got asked to do the book, again, Bluefishing, the art of making things happen, I did it because I thought there was a lot of people that were focusing on the wrong things. They would focus on a pretty website. They would focus on a CRM. I never had any of those things. Yeah. They would focus on all these things as, oh yeah, if I buy that program, then I'll be rich. If I get this article in Forbes, then I'll be rich. Right. And it's all wrong. And so what I did was I focused this book on how to be more impactful, how to create relationships, how to achieve what other people call impossible. Yeah. And I released the book, and then all of a sudden I got these clients that I had going, hey, I want you to coach me on how I can be bigger. I want you to be able to work. So I launched Sims Distillery, which is my online community. I started coaching people, and I started putting events together called speakeasies, where we all get together 3 times a year and we disrupt things, and then we go out and create impact. So really, I was already doing it in the concierge firm while everyone was focusing on the, the superstar that I was dealing with or the event that I was dealing with. I was already coaching and manipulating your mindset right from the start. So for me, it was a natural progression to go, okay, I've shown you that I can do it. Now I'm going to show you how you can do it.
Right.
And that's why I do so much speaking and coaching now.
Yeah. And then also the factor of kind of giving back. And this is the reason why we started our school, because we wanted to kind of get it back. Because at some point, when you have all the wealth and success, then the happiness or life meaning takes on a different level. Like you want it, like it's something that's not really measurable by money or so. It's like this giving forward thought possibility. Yeah. So
yeah, I noticed that when I spent a billionaire's money to give him a great experience, it gave him a great story to tell at his next cocktail party.
Right.
But if I can work with a client to get them to change their marketing, to get them to change their business, to get them to change their mindset, then it improves the relationship they have with their wife, with their kids, with their husband, with their staff. And then the staff start benefiting from that mindset. So when you work with clients to benefit them, you impact way more people than simply spending a billionaire's cash to give them a cool story.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, really awesome that I met you through this podcast, because all that aligns with what we really believe in and what our listeners believe in. And for a lot of our listeners, the mindset part is a big part that they can definitely benefit from, maybe Steve programs or Steve's information. So we'll put all the information down below. So Steve, how can our listener contact you?
Well, the easiest way is to join the free Facebook group, An Entrepreneur's Advantage with Steve Sims, or jump on a stevedsims.com. There's only one M in Sims, stevedsims.com. Sign up for the newsletters and that'll direct you over there as well. But I'm easy to get. Steve D. Sims everywhere, Instagram, Twitter, the whole base.
That's awesome. And then Steve, from here on, what do you envision yourself do in 5 years or next year? Maybe 5 years too long for you. From here on, what do you have in plans to do next year?
The ridiculous. Anything that's stupid, anything that's ridiculous, anything that's perceived by other people as unachievable, that's what I'm going for. I think the definition of pain would be to be in the exact same position next year that I am today. So, I want to grow me. I want to grow my clients. I want to grow my brand, my universe, my impact. And there should be no end to it. I will end when I'm knocked off a motorbike and can no longer do anything. That's it.
Yeah, let's hopefully that doesn't happen for many years. Yes. Well, so awesome to have you here, Steve, today. And we'll definitely put all the links down below over here. And really grateful to make acquaintance with you and the interview today. Thank you, Steve, for your time.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome.